Well, we're dusting ourselves down and getting ready for a by-election in London, where the Labour Member of Parliament, erstwhile anti-corruption minister in Keir Starmer's government, is now wanted in Bangladesh for corruption. There is now a warrant for her arrest issued by the High Court in Dhaka, capital of Bangladesh, and there is an extant extradition treaty between both countries. It's a matter of hours before a request for her extradition arrives from the government of Bangladesh. What's Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, going to do? The rule of law, the rules-based international order and all that. The respecting of extradition treaties that led us to the torture and near crucifixion of Julian Assange over these last few years being a case in point. And if she's extradited to Bangladesh, she cannot, of course, continue to hold her position as a Member of Parliament in London. So, by-election pending in London. There is another one going on already in Runcorn in Cheshire, where the erstwhile Labour Member of Parliament was convicted for battering and bludgeoning a constituent to the ground and then beyond the ground whilst he was lying on the ground. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer is going to prosper in that by-election either, or in the local elections being held, helpfully for him, on the same day. He wanted to get all the bad news over at once. Well, it's going to be extremely bad news. Not least Keir in the town of Rochdale. Mark my words. Now, the British political scene is interesting, but not quite as interesting as everything that's going on globally. And we have two of the best possible guests on the China front and indeed on the Middle East front. Let's start with the Middle East front. It appears, and certainly is the thesis of Chris Hedges, who will be joining us in the second hour of the show tonight, that Netanyahu is getting ready for an almost biblical ethnic cleansing. The simple erasure of 2 million Palestinian people from the Gaza Strip. Chris believes that this is now imminent and that this would be a precursor to the ethnic cleansing, the erasure of the remaining Palestinian population in occupied Jerusalem, where on this Palm Sunday Jesus entered to tumultuous welcome from the masses and was then within days on a cross in Jerusalem. If the Palestinian population in Jerusalem and in the West Bank and Gaza, now 6, 7, perhaps 8 million strong, is to be successfully removed, the question is, where are they going to put them? Well, the latest hot tip is the areas of Syria that Israel has now taken uncontested control of. Indeed, Syria's invasion by Israel was not contested at all by the holy warriors, the jihadists they used to like to call themselves. And Israel is now in possession of land in Syria, the land where Jesus once walked and where many of the people still speak in the Christian population the Aramaic language of Jesus himself. It is all rather biblical on this Palm Sunday. Of course, what they're going to do with the Palestinians who refuse to get on the trucks will be, of course, the movie of the century. I wonder if they'll show it like the Ten Commandments and all the other films they used to regularly show on TV. For it would be a biblical transfer of population accompanied by mass slaughter. And they've already begun slaughtering the firstborn. The number of children slaughtered in the last 10 days of Israel's unilateral breach of the ceasefire is now in the high hundreds. The number of people killed in toto in the low thousands. It is a daily nightly massacre. And they chose Palm Sunday to bomb the Baptist Church Hospital Al-Ahli in the occupied Gaza Strip. There's no hiding place. When they first bombed Al-Ahli, they blamed it on the Palestinian resistance themselves. They said it was a blood libel, the idea that they would bomb a hospital. Since when they have bombed every single hospital, destroyed every single hospital. The last trauma, accident and emergency unit left in Gaza is the Al-Ahli Baptist Church Hospital. I don't know if the Baptist Church have said a single word about the attack on Palm Sunday on their hospital, which stands in their name and is funded by them, but it wouldn't surprise me if they haven't said anything at all, because the Christian world is struck dumb. I've just seen a tweet by somebody saying, are you asking us to believe that there are Christians in Gaza? Well, I'm not asking you to believe, ma'am, because you're plainly an idiot. And I wouldn't ask you to exercise your cognitive function at all. But the number of people who appear completely oblivious to the fact that Jesus walked in Palestine, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, that Jesus' parents had to come to Bethlehem because they couldn't get into Jerusalem for a census from the Palestinian town of Nazareth in the Palestinian region of Galilee. The number of people who are completely, splendidly oblivious to these historic facts, but wearing their Christianity on their sleeves is simply astounding. It is simply astounding that 10, 20, 30 million evangelical fanatic Christians who speak in tongues, who lay on hands, who are praying for the rapture, praying for Armageddon, have absolutely no idea that it all took place in the Holy Land. The Holy Land. They seem to think that Jesus came from Illinois, and the British ones that Jesus came from Middlesbrough. They say things like Christianity has no place in the Middle East, even though Palm Sunday celebrations are taking place in virtually every single Arab country in the Middle East, with rather more gusto than they are taking place in English towns and cities today. It is a matter of astonishment. But then the crowd chose Barabbas when invited by Pontius Pilate to save one of those who was to be crucified. They chose to save Barabbas instead of Jesus. And today's crowd chooses murder and mayhem, torture and chaos throughout the world, or at least they don't meaningfully oppose it, or they willfully shill for it, or they earn a living shilling for it in the broadcast and print media in Western countries. There was a bombing raid on Sumy in Ukraine yesterday, on a military parade, including mercenaries from foreign countries, which they held in an area where civilians were present. And it would appear, if the figure can be relied upon, that 21 civilian deaths occurred in that bombing raid. And every single politician in the Western world has ritually condemned it. And every single one of them has made reference to the fact that it took place on Palm Sunday. But not one of them, not one of them has highlighted the attack on the Baptist Hospital, Al-Ahli, in the Gaza Strip by Israel on the very same day. I could go on talking about the mind-bending hypocrisy the Everestian levels of ignorance and stupidity, the complete gobbledygook that one sees from so many people in Western countries on what's taking place in the Holy Land, but time is against me. I am more and more convinced that the only solution for the Israel-Palestine conflict is a kind of Switzerland, or the United Arab Emirates, a confederation, a Holy Land confederation, where autonomous parts of that confederation coexist one with the other within a single state, called the Holy Land Confederation. I see no other ending to this. I see no other solution to this, unless Israel is confident that it can get away with the literal crucifixion and death of millions of Palestinian people, or their forced exile. There's not even a railway line for cattle trucks to take them, either to Syria or anywhere else. It would have to be on the backs of trucks. Quite an optic, that. Quite a photo opportunity, that. Although they may succeed in killing every single journalist, every single cameraman and woman who might have recorded for posterity this new Holocaust, which we have all been complicit in and a part of over this last period. I need to move on because there are so many big international stories. It seems that the talks in Oman between the United States and Iran went very well, such that they are continuing. It seems like Trump was blustering to try and improve his negotiating position vis-à-vis the Iranian government in those talks. If so, he made a strategic error. I was going to say tactical, but strategic, because trying to bully a country like Iran, who believe that if they perish in standing up to the United States' great Satan, they'll go directly to heaven without having to pass go, is a forlorn hope. It is a fool's errand. The Iranian people, in their overwhelming number, are ready and willing to defend their country and to die for it if necessary. And that death, as I've said, would take them straight to paradise. It's quite hard to defeat an enemy like that, as Saddam Hussein found in the 1980s. It's quite hard to defeat a people who are ready to die to defend that which they believe inalienably to be theirs. So we must hope that in the talks, Donald Trump's people were a bit more respectful. And it should be said, the early signs are that they were. And that these talks, which are now going to continue next week in Oman or elsewhere, perhaps in Europe, perhaps in Geneva, where the original JCPOA, the original Iran nuclear deal, was thrashed out, hammered out, and eventually signed. We must hope so, because the outcome would be complete chaos and mayhem and large-scale loss of life in the region and the cessation of almost all economic activity. Certainly any economic activity that required fossil fuels would be the direct and immediate result of any outright war between the United States and Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran. And there may have been one or two barking chihuahuas from the European Union in that war also. But it would have as its consequence the destruction of the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf, all of whom are to one degree or another servants of the United States of America. So we must hope that it is avoided. But the biggest story of the week has been about tariffs. We dealt with it on Wednesday, and you should look back at that show with, again, two of the best possible guests that you could possibly have to discuss the issues that rolled out when Donald Trump went berserk with his tariff board in the Oval Office. But it seems that he let his mouth run away with itself, and not for the first, probably not for the last time either. He basically wrecked the stock markets of the world, then engaged in a very tidy bit of insider trading in which he boasted on camera that his own friends made many hundreds of millions of dollars when he reversed course and scrapped the tariffs that had caused the wreckage and carnage on the stock markets. They handily knew that it was time to buy because Trump was about to reverse course. He did reverse course on virtually everything and everywhere except China, where he doubled, tripled, quadrupled, quintupled, sextupled down. And the numbers are mind-boggling. The percentage of tariffs were such imposed by Washington and then in retaliation by Beijing that they were effectively saying, don't even think about buying our products. The problem is the United States economy is utterly dependent on imports from China, as indeed to a lesser or greater extent, and it's usually greater, are the economies of all of the United States' principal allies and friends in the world, whether in Latin America, where even Berserk Milei, the lunatic in charge in Buenos Aires, the Argentine #1 trading partner in the world, is not America, it's not even Israel, it's China. And it's China in every Latin American country. And it's China in an increasing number of European countries too. So an all-out trade war with China could only have one winner. And Trump, Blinken's not there, but he had to do a lot of blinking. He blinked first when he asked the Chinese to call him, which again shows a fundamental lack of cultural understanding. Have you ever met a Chinaman, Donald? Have you ever met a Chinaman who can be ordered what to do? Because I never have. I have found the Chinese the most upright and correct and dignified people I have ever dealt with anywhere. The idea that you can bully and browbeat a country like the People's Republic of China, ordering them to call you, and imagine that they're going to telephone? Is there nobody in your administration knows anything about China, about Chinese culture, predating the Communist Party of China by thousands of years? Evidently not. The days when China can be ordered by foreign countries what to do are long, long, long gone and will never, ever reoccur. So when the phone didn't ring, when the Chinese government didn't sue for peace, American capitalism called the White House instead and told them that our economy will collapse pretty damn quickly unless you reverse these tariffs on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K items, raw materials, commodities, and finished exported goods. If you don't back down, there'll be no iPhones on sale, at least not for fewer than thousands of dollars. And there'll be rioting in the streets when people can't get their computers, their phones, and their other electronic goods, which we in America simply cannot make. And they cannot make them, not because China stole their lunch, but because American capitalists exported their productive capacity to China because it was in the short-term interest of their quarterly profit. Now, my final word on this, and it relates also to British steel. I like China. I'm a supporter of China in these big global geostrategic questions. That much is obvious to you. But that doesn't mean I want China to own us. It doesn't mean I want our steel industry in Britain to be owned by the Chinese. I'm against foreign ownership of any of our strategic industries, whether it's our land or our water or our public utilities or our commanding heights of our economy. I don't want to be Chinese. I believe in socialism in British characteristics. I'm not shilling for foreign countries here. And insofar as Donald Trump is trying to return greatness to American manufacture and industry, he has my full support. But you can't do that overnight, Donald, and you'll never be able to do it by sticking your big fat fingers in the eyes of your Chinese interlocutors. It's bad manners, and it doesn't work. This is the mother of all talk shows.